The war was over. The galaxy, once alive with the clash of fleets and the thunder of weapons, now lay in an uneasy silence. Planets that had once thrived were scarred with craters and burned cities. Starships floated silently among the wreckage of space battles, their metal husks twisted like the remains of fallen giants. Humans had fought hard, alongside many alien allies, but the cost had been unimaginable. Lives were lost, worlds were destroyed, and hope had almost been forgotten. Captain Elia's heart walked through the ruins of what had once been a thriving space station on the edge of the Veyari system. He had survived battles that could have ended him dozens of times, yet now in the quiet aftermath he felt strangely lost. The war had given him a purpose, and without it he wasn't sure where he fit. His uniform was worn and scorched, his boots dusty from traveling across shattered terrain, but his eyes were sharp, alert. He had learned the hard way that even when the fighting stopped, danger did not. "Captain Hart," a voice crackled through his calm, sharp and formal. It was Admiral Corrin, a human who had led many campaigns alongside Elia's. "You have a new assignment, one you will find unusual." Her name is Lyra. But guarding a small, fragile alien girl seemed almost trivial compared to the horrors he had endured. "Understood," he said finally, his voice low. "Where is she?" "You are the only one we trust to protect her." He walked carefully, every step measured, every sense alert. Despite the war being over, threats still lurked in every shadow. He found her in a small chamber at the far end of the station. Lyra sat on the floor, her legs tucked under her, her large eyes wide and luminous. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, a soft glow that made her look almost otherworldly. She was tiny, no older than 10 by human standards, but there was something in her posture that suggested she carried more knowledge and awareness than any child should. She did not cry, she did not flinch. She simply watched him, her gaze steady, almost challenging. "You must be Elia's heart," she said in a voice that was melodic but strange to human ears. She spoke common, the language used by most species after decades of interstellar diplomacy, yet her accent carried an unplaceable rhythm that made every word feel like music. "Yes," he said cautiously, kneeling down to her level. "I'm here to get you out of this station." Why would a human care about a Veyari child? "Because it's my duty," he said finally, "and because someone has to make sure you survive." It was subtle at first, like a gentle current, but he sensed strength in it, an intelligence and awareness beyond what her small form suggested. They moved quickly through the station, avoiding collapsed corridors and malfunctioning defense systems. Elias had learned long ago that survival depended on thinking ahead, predicting danger, and using the environment to his advantage. He guided her through the rubble, ducking under fallen beams and climbing over broken machinery. At every step, he remained vigilant, scanning the shadows for signs of threat. "Do you know why they want me?" Lyra asked, her voice quiet but firm. Elias glanced at her. "Because you are important," he said carefully. "Because you are the last of your people, some will want to use that to gain power. Others will just want to see the last of the Veyari gone. Either way, they won't hesitate." Their timing was too precise to be random. They had been tracking Lyra. "Stay close," Elias whispered. He drew his weapon, checking the energy levels and safety locks. His heart pounded not from fear, but from the rush of anticipation. This was what he was trained for. This was where humans excelled: adaptability, ingenuity, and courage in the face of impossible odds. The mercenaries breached the station in a controlled drop, moving with precision and skill. Elias lured them through the broken corridors, using traps and collapsed walkways to slow them down. He had learned that the human mind could solve problems quickly, even when resources were scarce, and he applied every trick he knew to protect Lyra. Lyra followed him, surprisingly agile, her eyes scanning the environment as if she could sense the dangers before they appeared. Elias realized that there was more to her than met the eye. Her presence was not just something to protect. It was something that could change the balance of power if used wisely. As they reached the docking bay, Elias spotted a small transport ship. It was barely functional, but it could get them off the station if they moved fast. He helped Lyra inside and began starting the systems. The mercenaries had caught up, but he had a plan. Using the remaining station defenses, he triggered an energy pulse that temporarily disabled their weapon systems. The attackers cursed and shouted, giving Elias just enough time to launch the ship. They rocketed into space, leaving the burning station behind. Elias exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the mission settle on him. He looked at Lyra, who was watching him with calm, piercing eyes. "You did well," he said, trying to offer her some reassurance. But this is only the beginning. Others will come. The galaxy is not safe yet. Why would anyone protect me when everything is so broken? And now here he was, a human soldier carrying the hope of an entire alien species on his shoulders. Because someone has to, he said. And because humans, we don't give up, not easily. We fight for what matters, even when the odds are against us. He also felt a strange sense of purpose he hadn't known he was missing. The war was over, yes, but the true battle, for hope, survival, and the future, was only beginning. As the small ship glided silently through the debris of space, Elias and Lyra stared out into the darkness. Stars twinkled in the distance, unbroken by the scars of war. And for the first time in a long while, Elias felt a spark of hope. Not just for himself, but for Lyra, for her people, and perhaps even for humanity. He tightened his grip on the controls and whispered almost to himself, "We'll survive." "We always do." The stars streaked past the small transport ship as it moved through the debris of the Veyari system. Elia's heart had piloted countless ships in battles, but this journey was different. The ship was barely functional, patched together from scavenged parts, and its shields flickered under stress. He had learned to trust his instincts and improvisation, and right now, those qualities were more important than any advanced technology. Lyra sat quietly beside him, her large eyes scanning the stars. She said little, but Elias could feel her awareness, her curiosity, her silent evaluation of every movement and sound. She had already proven that she was more than just a child. Her presence carried a power and knowledge that was alien and yet undeniable. "We need a safe place," Elias said finally. His voice was calm, though tension edged it. "Somewhere they won't find us, somewhere we can plan our next move." "Humans destroyed more than they built, didn't they?" "Yes," he said, his tone even but firm. "We've made mistakes, many mistakes, but we also learn, we adapt. That is how we survive." There was a signal nearby, a small vessel moving fast and with precision, mercenaries. He had expected them to follow, but their speed was troubling. Whoever they were, they had experience, and they knew Lyra's importance. "They're close," he murmured. "Get ready." Elias didn't yet understand how much she could do, but he had learned to respect her instincts. In the past few hours, she had sensed dangers before they appeared, her reactions quick and precise. He had no doubt she could help him, though in ways humans could only guess. As the small enemy ship approached, Elias maneuvered his transport through a dense field of asteroid debris. He had learned during the war that human ingenuity could turn even a weak vessel into a deadly weapon. He angled the ship to use the larger asteroids as shields, weaving through the jagged rocks with precision that would have amazed anyone watching. The mercenary ship followed, firing energy pulses that scorched the surface of nearby asteroids. Elias kept moving, dodging, weaving, and leading the enemy into a trap he had spotted, a cluster of unstable debris left from the war. "Lyra," he said calmly, "focus, I need your help." Elias wasn't sure exactly how it worked, but he had seen the effects. Energy fields bending, objects moving slightly, and warnings flashing in his mind as if she could sense danger. Together, they guided the ship into the debris field, and the mercenary vessel followed blindly, intent on their pursuit. Elias triggered a maneuver he had used in countless dogfights. The ship spun sharply, and the debris around it shifted. One massive chunk of metal, twisted and sharp from an old battle, struck the pursuing vessel. Sparks flew, energy shields flickered, and the mercenary ship was forced to retreat momentarily. Lyra's eyes widened. "That was incredible," she exclaimed, a rare smile on her face. Elias allowed himself a small grin. "We make a good team," he said. "Humans and Veyari together, better than either alone." He checked the systems and began assessing their supplies. Food and water were minimal, and the ship's engines were still fragile. They could not stay long. "This will have to do for now," Elias said. "We rest here, make repairs, and plan our next move, but we cannot linger. They will find us eventually." "Why do they want me?" she asked again, her voice quieter this time. "Is it for power?" "That makes me angry. Use it to protect yourself, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." He also showed her human ingenuity in action, simple engineering fixes, clever traps, and ways to make limited resources work far beyond their normal capacity. Lyra absorbed everything quickly, her mind sharp and focused. She asked questions, experimented, and sometimes challenged Elias' decisions, but he appreciated that. A curious mind was a strong mind, and in the galaxy they now navigated strong minds survived. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the canyon, Lyra approached him. "Elias, do humans always fight so much?" she asked softly. He stared at the glowing moons, thinking of the countless battles he had survived, the lives lost, and the chaos left in humanity's wake. "No," he said slowly. "We fight because we must, but we also build. We learn, we adapt. War is easy. Survival, creation, and hope, those are the hard parts, but humans, we endure. And that endurance is what makes us strong." She realized that humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, fighters, and leaders. Their quiet time was interrupted by a sudden tremor. The ground shook beneath them and dust fell from the canyon walls. Elias tensed, scanning the horizon. "They found us," he muttered. Before Lyra could ask, a group of scavengers appeared at the edge of the canyon. They were armed, desperate, and reckless. Elias didn't hesitate. He moved to intercept them, using the natural terrain to his advantage. Rocks shifted, hidden crevices provided cover, and he forced the attackers into narrow passes where their numbers were useless. His mind worked like a well-oiled machine, predicting their movements, setting traps, and improvising with whatever he had. Lyra stayed close, her hands glowing faintly. She didn't fully understand how to control her abilities, but instinct guided her. Small rocks floated, energy barriers shimmered, and Elias realized she could sense danger before it fully materialized. Together, they were unstoppable, not because of brute force, but because they combined human strategy with Veyari perception. After hours of skirmishes, the attackers retreated. Elias was bruised and exhausted, but the sense of victory was undeniable. Lyra looked at him, awe and admiration shining in her eyes. "You are incredible," she said. Elias shook his head. "Not incredible, human. We survive, we fight, we think ahead, and we protect those who need it. That is what makes us strong." He realized that his experience, his mistakes, and his instincts all had a role to play in this new chapter of the galaxy. As the twin moons set and the first light of dawn touched the canyon, Elias and Lyra sat together, catching their breath. The stars above were bright and full of promise, and for the first time the galaxy seemed less like a place of war and more like a place of possibility. Elias looked at Lyra, her small form glowing faintly in the early light. "We have a long journey ahead," he said. "Many will try to stop us, many will doubt us, but we will survive. Humans always do, and now so will you." And together they would face the challenges ahead, not as hunter and prey, but as a team, human and Veyari, learning from each other, growing stronger with every step. The war was over, but the chase had only begun. And in the quiet of the canyon, with stars stretching infinitely above, Elia's heart and Lyra prepared for the trials that awaited them. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but humans endured, and with them hope endured too. The small ship drifted silently through the outer edges of the galaxy, its engines low and cautious. Elia's heart kept the ship close to asteroid fields and debris clusters, using them as cover. The galaxy had become a dangerous place, even after the war, and anyone who knew of Lyra's existence would try to capture her. He had learned that caution was as important as courage. Lyra sat beside him, her large eyes following every movement on the control panel. "Elias," she said, "why do humans continue to explore, even after everything?" He thought about it carefully. "Humans survive because we don't stop. We explore because we want to understand. We make mistakes, yes, but we also learn. Exploration, it is how we find hope. Otherwise, we are lost." He recycled energy from the shields to power the engines, fashioned temporary tools from spare metal, and even created a small filtration system for the air. It was the kind of thinking that humans excelled at, turning scarce resources into solutions that could keep them alive. Lyra watched and learned. She mimicked his movements, asked questions about the designs, and experimented with small energy manipulations. Elias was impressed. "You are learning fast," he said. "But remember, power is only as good as the control you have over it." Elias activated the ship's external scanners and saw a small convoy approaching. Mercenaries, heavily armed, were clearly searching for them. He narrowed his eyes. They were persistent, too persistent to be random. "Lyra," he said calmly, "we need a plan. They will not stop until they find you. I can guide you." He could set traps, create ambush points, and use the narrow passes to funnel attackers. Lyra hovered beside him, her energy creating subtle barriers that moved debris silently. They worked as a team, human strategy guiding alien intuition. When the mercenaries arrived, Elias waited. They moved cautiously, expecting resistance, but they did not anticipate the traps. A sudden collapse of rock pinned one of their vehicles, while Lyra's energy fields redirected weapons fire harmlessly into the ground. Elias darted from cover to cover, using clever maneuvers to disable their equipment. Each move was calculated, precise, and executed with confidence born of years of survival. The mercenaries were skilled, but humans could adapt faster than machines or even raw power. Elias improvised at every turn. He collapsed bridges, used small explosives fashioned from ship fuel, and directed Lyra to use her abilities in tandem with the environment. Together, they were unstoppable. After hours of skirmishes, the attackers retreated. Elias was exhausted, but he looked at Lyra and felt a strange pride. "You did well," he said. "You trusted yourself and worked with me. That is how we win." Humans endure because we adapt, because we think, and because we never give up. She had seen humans as chaotic and destructive, but now she saw another side. Humans as problem solvers, as survivors, as beings capable of hope and ingenuity. The quiet of the night was broken by a sudden vibration underfoot. Elias froze, signaling Lyra to stay alert. The ground shook again, stronger this time. From the shadows, a large, alien creature emerged. It was a Sirian stalker, a predator that had survived the war and thrived in the chaos of uninhabited worlds. Its eyes glowed with hunger and its movements were swift and silent. Elias raised his weapon, but he knew bullets alone would not stop it. He glanced at Lyra. "Now," he said. Lyra's energy flared, creating a shimmering shield that pushed the creature back temporarily. Elias used the moment to set a trap. He lured it toward a narrow canyon where the creature could be trapped. The Sirian was strong, but Elias used his knowledge of terrain, physics, and improvisation to turn the environment into a weapon. Rocks fell, energy pulses distracted, and Lyra's powers redirected the creature's attacks. Finally, the predator was cornered. Elias moved quickly, applying a device he had fashioned from scrap metal and ship components. It emitted a pulse that temporarily immobilized the creature. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she reinforced the barrier, ensuring it could not escape. The danger passed. Elias exhaled deeply, his heart still racing. Lyra turned to him, a mixture of awe and excitement in her eyes. "That was amazing," she said. "You fought with strategy, not just strength. Humans are clever." Elias taught Lyra how to read star charts, how to predict movement of ships, and how to plan escape routes. She learned quickly, her mind sharp and intuitive. Together, they developed a rhythm, a silent communication that allowed them to anticipate each other's actions. As they approached a small, abandoned colony, they noticed signs of recent activity. Aliens and humans alike had tried to survive here, but many had left, and some had disappeared mysteriously. Elias landed the ship cautiously, scanning for threats. Lyra's glow pulsed softly, sensing something he could not detect. Inside the colony, they discovered old data terminals. Elias accessed them, scanning for information about mercenary movements, trade routes, and survivors. Lyra stood beside him, her energy interfacing in ways that even Elias could not fully understand. Together, they pieced together information about potential allies, safe havens, and the next steps for their journey. Hours passed, and as they worked, Elias realized something important. Humans were not just survivors because of their strength, but because of their ability to think, learn, and adapt in collaboration with others. Lyra's presence amplified this lesson. She brought intuition and perception that humans lacked, while he brought strategy and experience. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. As night fell again on the colony, Lyra approached Elias. "Do you think we will ever be safe?" she asked, her voice quiet. Elias considered her question. Safety was relative in a galaxy scarred by war, but he had learned that humans did not wait for safety, they created it. "We will find safety," he said firmly. "Not because it will come to us, but because we will make it. Together, we can survive anything." She was the future of her people, and perhaps a symbol of what the galaxy could become if humans and aliens learned to work together. Suddenly, a distant signal flashed on the terminal. It was a warning, a communication from an unknown source. Elias analyzed it quickly. "They know where we are," he said. "Our enemies are moving faster than we expected. We need to leave immediately." He realized that this partnership, this union of species and skills, was what made humans truly extraordinary. As the ship lifted off, the stars stretching infinitely before them, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but humans had survived worse. And now, with Lyra at his side, he knew that together they could face anything. The journey was far from over. The enemies were still out there, the threats still growing, and the challenges ahead were unknown. But Elia's heart and Lyra were ready. They had learned from each other, grown stronger together, and discovered that survival was not just about strength, but about courage, intelligence, and trust. And so they flew into the darkness of space, the stars ahead promising danger, discovery, and hope. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, a vast expanse of stars, debris, and unknown dangers. Elia's heart had flown through countless battles, but now, protecting Lyra felt like a mission greater than any war he had fought. Her presence was more than a responsibility. It was a test of everything he had learned about human ingenuity, courage, and survival. The small transport ship glided silently toward a planet that showed signs of life. It was a rocky world with dense forests and deep canyons, a place that could hide them from mercenaries, warlords, and other threats still lurking in the post-war chaos. Elias calculated the descent carefully, considering every variable: wind currents, gravity fluctuations, terrain stability. He had learned that humans survived not because of brute force alone, but because they thought ahead, adapted, and used the environment to their advantage. Lyra sat beside him, glowing faintly as she concentrated. "I sense others," she said quietly. "They are near." More than before. The valley was quiet, deceptively peaceful, but he knew that appearances were dangerous. Every quiet place in the galaxy could hide a threat. As they moved away from the ship, Lyra led the way, her glowing presence illuminating the path. Elias had come to trust her instincts completely. Her ability to sense danger, combined with his tactical mind, made them a team that few could challenge. He also realized that humans were more than just survivors. They were creators, innovators, and leaders in any situation, capable of adapting even in the face of overwhelming odds. They set up a temporary camp near a cluster of rocks that offered natural protection. Elias used his skills to create traps and early warning systems, improvising with local materials and remnants of the ship's technology. He taught Lyra to recognize patterns in the environment, to predict movement, and to plan escape routes. Together, they prepared for the inevitable confrontation that would come. Hours later, their patience was rewarded, or rather, tested. From the ridges above, movement stirred. A group of mercenaries had discovered their presence, their weapons glinting under the dim light of the valley. Elias crouched behind cover, assessing their numbers, their strategy, and the environment. He whispered instructions to Lyra, who responded with subtle energy pulses, creating barriers and redirecting attention. The humans moved first, using the terrain to their advantage. Elias had positioned fallen logs, rocks, and shallow trenches to channel the attackers into narrow paths. He had calculated their likely approach based on experience and instinct. When the mercenaries advanced, they walked into the trap. Rocks fell from above, energy pulses deflected their weapons, and the terrain itself seemed to work against them. Lyra's powers had grown stronger. She manipulated small objects, redirected energy, and created subtle illusions that confused the attackers. Elias watched with approval, realizing that her abilities were not just raw power. They were precision tools when guided properly. He had taught her patience, strategy, and thinking ahead, and now she applied those lessons instinctively. The battle continued for hours. The mercenaries adapted, trying to flank them using ranged weapons and coordinated attacks. But Elias was always one step ahead. He improvised constantly, turning the environment into a weapon, using debris, fallen trees, and improvised energy traps. Lyra worked in perfect harmony, sensing danger, amplifying defenses, and striking at the right moment. Despite exhaustion, Elias remained calm. Humans excelled under pressure, he thought, because they could think, adapt, and endure when others would panic. Every move he made was calculated, and every risk was measured. Lyra's energy fields and instincts multiplied his effectiveness, creating a force that was both intelligent and unpredictable. As the battle reached its peak, Elias realized the mercenaries had one final card to play. A heavily armored vehicle approached from the ridge, its energy cannons ready to fire. He glanced at Lyra. "We need to end this quickly," he said. She nodded, concentrating deeply. Elias directed her attention to the weak points of the vehicle, showing her where her energy could disrupt its systems. With a precise combination of human strategy and Veyari ability, Lyra created a barrier that deflected the cannon fire, while Elias triggered improvised explosives that immobilized the vehicle. The remaining mercenaries, seeing their advantage destroyed, retreated into the shadows. The valley was quiet again. Elias and Lyra stood together, catching their breath. The danger had passed for now, but Elias knew it was only temporary. The galaxy was vast and threats were never far behind. Lyra looked at him with awe. You think of everything. Humans are clever. Intelligence, courage, and adaptability are what make us unstoppable. Lyra absorbed everything eagerly, demonstrating that learning was as natural to her as breathing. As dawn approached, a strange signal appeared on the ship's sensors. Elias analyzed it carefully. It was a transmission from a distant planet, encrypted and unusual. Someone is trying to communicate, he said. We should investigate. It could be an ally or a trap. I can sense it. It is complicated. I do not fully understand, but it feels cautious. The galaxy was unpredictable, but humans had a way of finding solutions in even the most dangerous situations. As they approached the source of the signal, they found a small station orbiting a barely habitable planet. It was abandoned but functional, and its energy signature was faint but steady. Elias docked cautiously, scanning for threats. Lyra's instincts guided him, sensing areas that were safe and areas that could be dangerous. Together, they explored the station, uncovering remnants of previous inhabitants, supplies, and valuable information about the galaxy's current state. In the central chamber, they found a communication terminal still operational. Elias activated it, and a holographic image appeared. An alien, unfamiliar but clearly intelligent, spoke in a language that Lyra could translate partially. The alien warned of a growing threat, a faction seeking to dominate the galaxy, using remnants of the war's technology to gain power. Lyra's expression grew serious. They are organizing, she said quietly. They will come for me, and for anyone who stands in their way. Elias taught Lyra advanced tactics, improvisation, and problem-solving. She learned quickly, demonstrating remarkable understanding and intuition. Together, they built defenses, set traps, and practiced maneuvers that would give them an advantage when the inevitable confrontation arrived. One evening, as they looked out over the planet's surface, Lyra spoke softly. Elias, do you think humans will always survive? That is what makes humans extraordinary. As night fell, a distant rumble echoed through the planet's atmosphere. Elias stiffened, recognizing the sound immediately, approaching ships. Their enemies had found them. He looked at Lyra. It's time. We fight not just to survive, but to show that we cannot be beaten. The battle ahead would test every skill they had learned, every ounce of courage and intelligence they possessed. But humans endured because they could adapt, think, and persevere. And with Lyra at his side, Elia's heart knew that they could face anything the galaxy threw at them. The first ships appeared on the horizon, their energy weapons glinting. Elias and Lyra were ready. The first ships hovered above the valley, their engines humming with the promise of destruction. Elia's heart crouched behind a jagged rock, assessing the enemy's formation. He counted at least 3 large warships and multiple smaller attack vessels, each bristling with weapons capable of tearing through anything in their path. His jaw tightened. Humans had survived countless wars, outnumbered and outgunned, and he intended to survive this one too. Lyra stood beside him, her small form glowing with energy that pulsed softly like a heartbeat. She had grown stronger, more confident, and now her abilities were no longer just a tool, they were a force. Elias had taught her strategy, patience, and caution. She had taught him intuition, foresight, and the subtle power of perception beyond human senses. Together they were ready. Stay calm, Elias whispered. They are strong, but we are smarter. We use the terrain, the technology, and each other. That is how humans survive. That is how humans win. I will follow your lead. He had turned the environment itself into a defense, something only a human mind could adapt so quickly to survive under pressure. The first attack came in the form of energy blasts, striking rocks and shaking the ground. Elias and Lyra held their position, using every bit of cover and every advantage the valley offered. Lyra extended her hands, creating a shimmering barrier that deflected several blasts. Elias pushed forward, triggering small explosions to collapse the terrain and force enemy fighters into narrow paths where they could be managed more easily. Humans endured by thinking ahead, he reminded himself. Brute strength alone would not save them. Humans survived because they adapted, improvised, and fought with intelligence as well as courage. And in this moment, Elia's heart was putting every lesson into action. The smaller attack vessels dove into the narrow canyon, attempting to outflank them. Elias anticipated the move, guiding Lyra to reinforce barriers and redirect energy. Together, they created illusions, manipulated debris, and channeled energy pulses to confuse the attackers. The vessels collided with rocks and each other, retreating in disarray. Lyra's face was tense but focused. They are learning. They will try another approach. Trust your instincts, but listen to me. Every blast, every movement was met with a countermeasure born of human ingenuity and Veyari perception. As the battle intensified, Elias realized the enemy's goal, to capture Lyra alive. Their attacks were precise, aimed not just to destroy, but to corral her into a position where they could seize her. He shouted instructions, his voice calm and commanding despite the chaos. Lyra moved with him, her abilities now in perfect synchronization with his strategies. Humans survived by using every resource, every advantage, and every ally. Elias had learned this in war, and now he applied it in protecting the last hope of the Veyari people. He redirected debris, manipulated the ship's remaining energy, and coordinated with Lyra to create barriers and traps. Every move was calculated, precise, and deadly to their attackers. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The enemy adapted, but Elias adapted faster. They underestimated the combination of human ingenuity and Lyra's alien abilities. The attackers began to falter, their confidence shaken by the unpredictable strategies and the resilience of their opponents. Lyra's energy flared brilliantly, forming a dome around them that pulsed in harmony with Elias' movements. He directed her focus toward critical points, the enemy's engines, their energy sources, and weak structural areas. Lyra understood instantly, and with a series of precise pulses, she disabled several ships. The enemy's formation began to collapse. "Almost there," Elias said, his voice steady. "We finish this now." The remaining attackers had no choice but to retreat. Silence fell over the valley. Smoke and dust rose from the damaged ships and terrain, and Elias and Lyra stood together, exhausted but victorious. He looked at her, a faint smile breaking through the fatigue. "We did it. Humans endure, and now you endure too. I never thought humans could be so clever, so strong. You fight not just with weapons, but with your mind. That is extraordinary." Protecting Lyra had been more than a mission. It had been a test of human ingenuity, courage, and endurance. And now, in the aftermath of the battle, he realized the true value of humans. They did not just fight to win, they fought to protect, to build, and to inspire hope. The next days were spent repairing their ship and tending to minor injuries. Elias taught Lyra more about strategy, resource management, and the importance of intelligence in survival. She listened intently, her powers growing stronger with each lesson. She asked questions, experimented with new techniques, and began to understand the delicate balance between power and control. Together, they charted a course to Lyra's ancestral world, a place where survivors of her people might still exist. Elias explained the importance of alliances, negotiation, and trust. Humans survived not just by fighting, but by forming bonds, by inspiring loyalty, and by showing courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra began to understand that the strength of humans lay not only in their bodies or weapons, but in their hearts and minds. As they approached the distant planet, Elias and Lyra encountered a small group of survivors, Veyari who had hidden during the war, waiting for a sign of hope. When they saw Lyra, they hesitated, unsure if humans could be trusted. Elias stepped forward, showing not aggression but calm determination. He shared the story of their journey, of the battles fought, of the ingenuity and courage that had protected Lyra and ensured her survival. The Veyari were skeptical at first, but the evidence was undeniable. The survivors saw the truth. Humans had not only survived the war, but had proven themselves capable of protecting and inspiring others, even those of alien species. Elias' calm leadership, combined with Lyra's strength and wisdom, bridged the gap between mistrust and hope. Lyra spoke to her people, her voice steady and confident. "Humans are not just warriors," she said. "They are clever, courageous, and capable of compassion. They have saved me, guided me, and taught me that survival is not only about strength, but about intelligence, courage, and trust." Elias watched, understanding that this moment symbolized more than the survival of one child. It symbolized the possibility of a new era, where humans and aliens could cooperate, learn from each other, and rebuild a galaxy fractured by war. Over the following weeks, Elias and Lyra worked with the survivors to rebuild parts of the planet's infrastructure. Humans and Veyari collaborated, combining technology, knowledge, and strategy. Elias demonstrated how human ingenuity could turn scarce resources into effective solutions, while Lyra's abilities and knowledge helped guide the rebuilding process. Together, they showed that cooperation between species could overcome even the most difficult challenges. Ilias realized that the mission had transformed him as well. He had been a soldier, trained to survive and fight, but now he understood the true power of humans, courage combined with intelligence, empathy, and perseverance. Lyra's trust had shown him that survival was not enough. Humans had the potential to inspire, protect, and lead in ways that extended far beyond the battlefield. One evening, as the sun set over the planet's horizon, Ilias and Lyra stood together on a cliff, overlooking the rebuilding settlements. The air was quiet, the sky painted with colors of hope. The galaxy, vast and unpredictable, still held dangers, but humans had proven that even in the darkest times, they could endure, innovate, and guide others toward a brighter future. Lyra's hand rested gently on his arm. "Thank you, Ilias," she said softly. "Not just for protecting me, but for showing me the strength of humans. You have taught me courage, strategy, and hope. Humans endure, yes, but when we work with others, we can achieve far more than we imagine." He realized that survival was only the beginning. True greatness came from the ability to endure, adapt, and inspire hope in others. As night fell, Ilias looked at Lyra and then at the galaxy beyond. They had faced impossible odds, evaded mercenaries, fought battles, and survived where others would have perished. But more importantly, they had shown that humans, resilient, clever, and courageous, could change the course of history. The galaxy was still dangerous, but Ilia's heart and Lyra were ready. Together, they had forged a bond that would endure beyond wars, beyond threats, and beyond fear. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or numbers, but courage, intelligence, and heart. And as the stars twinkled endlessly above, Ilias whispered quietly to himself, "Humans endure, and together we can shape the future."